All right, so as I was saying, my ex, like I said, I made a mistake because my ex wouldn't tell her baby dad that she was pregnant. She told me that I needed to take care of her while she was pregnant, and because she had to have a cerclage because she had 3 abortions before, so she had a short cervix, so she needed me to take care of her because the doctor said she needed to be on bed rest. So she called off work, and I was supposed to take care of her, but as I said, I made a mistake, and I got upset with her daughter. I put her daughter outside, and then I, the next day, I was messaging her. I want to know what's going on. She's not responding to my messages, and like I said, she did that the whole pregnancy. She wouldn't respond to my messages, and it's because she didn't respect me. And as I said, I felt like what hurt a lot was, I wouldn't say it's the main thing, but what hurt a lot was that my mom wouldn't meet us, because my mom hadn't seen me for 20 years. She wouldn't meet us for Thanksgiving. So, I wanted to talk, I wanted to see what was going on, because my ex said that I needed to take care of her while she was pregnant, but she wasn't responding to me, and she'd been ghosting me the whole pregnancy because she didn't respect me. She kept on doing that, but as I said, the whole pregnancy, I did a lot for her. I bought $1,000 worth of food with food stamps for her. I would go out with her all the time and, get food, buy food for her. But I just want to know what was going on with the baby, but she wouldn't respond. So as I said, I went online and I was I was trying to get help, because my ex said in order for the baby to survive, she needed me to take care of her, but I wasn't taking care of her, so I was worried what was going on. And I did message her one time at the beginning of that, and she said that someone's taking care of her. She said that a friend's taking care of her. But I asked her, is your friend Jared, the guy who you were Snapchatting with? Like, I want to know who's this friend, but she should have been communicating with me. Like I said, she was cheating on me, Snapchatting with another guy, hiding stuff, but she should have been communicating with me. No, it's not Jared, it's my friend Susie, whatever, but she wouldn't communicate with me, and she ghosted me. And I'm trying to ask her, what's going on? Who's taking care of you so you could be on bed rest? And as I said, I called her at one point, and I don't know if she did this intentionally, but her daughter said, "Mommy, can you carry me up the stairs?" And then she's like, okay, and she carries her up the stairs and then brings her into her place. And I've been messaging her, don't carry your daughter up the stairs. Don't, and I don't know if she did that on purpose to try to screw me, to try to screw my mind or something, but, she wasn't responding to my text, and I want to know what's going on. So like I said, I felt like the big problem was that my mom wouldn't help either. Because, my ex wanted my mom to help take care of her during the pregnancy, while she was on bed rest, but my mom wouldn't come because she wouldn't see me. My mom wouldn't just forgive. And I'm going to get into details. So like I said, so then I started writing online, and I wrote a paper to my ex, and I was saying how it wasn't my fault. Because people are going to want to blame the victim, and they're going to want to think that there was something wrong with me. But there wasn't something wrong with me. I discovered theory of everything. I was an excellent basketball player. I would be playing professional basketball. I would be doing the rap music. But, so I wrote a whole thing, and I was basically saying, I felt bad for my ex because it wasn't my ex's fault. My ex didn't respect me because, in big part because my mom wouldn't talk to me. And as I said, if my mom would have talked to me, I would have got basketball videos of when I was younger a long time ago, and I could have studied. I just wanted to get the basketball videos so I could study the swag flow and stuff. So I was trying to, but my grandpa came up with that rule after the abuse that happened in high school. Oh, no, talk about the past, because if you talk about the past, you're not in the eternal moment. But he didn't want me to talk about the abuse that happened. It wasn't about the basketball. But when I brought it up to my mom, I wanted to get basketball videos. After college, mom was like, "Oh my God, you're 23 years old, you care about basketball? No, talk about the past. This is why you're schizophrenic, you're stuck in the past." I was never schizophrenic. But so, it's the abuse. It was her mentality was so negative toward me. But as I said, that stemmed from high school. It stemmed from when the middle school, when the shoot away machine messed up my shot. I'll get more into that. But, so I'm trying to get a hold of, I'm trying to have my mom talk to my ex to see if she can help take care of the baby, or see what's going on. But my mom was, My mom wasn't helping. So I wrote a thing, and in the thing, I wrote an essay, and in the essay, you know, and I sent it to my ex so that she would know that don't blame the victim, you know? In my case, it's not always the case. And probably, you know, and I'm not an innocent victim completely. You know, I'm not an angel. But also my parents were really bad parents. What they've done is terrible, you know? So I was describing, I wanted to say, you know, first off, I wanted to show that my dad's not, you know, just because he's a surgeon doesn't mean that he's incapable of doing wrong. And the fact of the matter was, you know, and I never was allowed to say this because my grandpa said, never blame, because if you're in the flow, you never blame. But the fact of the matter was, my dad was stupid. He got the shoot away machine. He really wanted to be, he thought I was going to be an NBA player. He really wanted to be a great basketball player, and I would have been a great basketball player. But he got the shoot away machine to make me shoot 500 shots a day. And because I'm picking the ball off the rack, I showed before, and I'll show it some other time, but it made it so I couldn't shoot right. Good shooter shoot the left foot pointed out right forward to the rim, but it made me shoot my left foot pointed forward, and I'll go into details, but my dad told me, okay, put your left foot forward and put your right foot pointed to the left, which is the exact opposite of how good shooters shoot. And also, good shooters shoot based off how they move into it. And I could, if I go into details, I could explain, but I don't want to make good shooters think. But you can't, if you see when I was the best shooter in the country, how I moved into shots, you can't do that when you're picking the ball off a rack. I would start picking the ball off the rack and start stepping straight forward and shooting. And so I'm in the game, I would shoot the same way, catch it and then step straight forward and shoot. Or move straight forward into shots. Like I said, after the shoot away machine, before the shoot away machine, I'm not gonna go into details, but I would catch the ball and I would catch it and then, move into it in a way, left foot pointed out, right foot to the rim. But after the shoot away machine, I'd catch it and I'd be going straight forward. So like I would practice in the backyard, I'd be having the ball, or I'd pick the ball off the rack and I'd just go like this all the time and shoot. But before, when I would catch the ball in the games, I would catch it and then step to the left and shoot, right? But then I'm in the games, not catching it, I'm going like this. Just like I'm practicing picking the ball off the rack and stepping straight forward and going like this. And my dad would tell me, keep your left foot straight and to get sideways, put your right foot to the side. So I'm going, shooting like this 100 times. Whereas before, in the game, I wouldn't do that. I would catch it, and then step to the left and then shoot with my right foot. So anyways, my dad messed up my shot. My dad was telling me to do the wrong thing. And then he got mad at me. But it's never going to go through. My dad would never imagine that he was the one who's the problem. He's the one who's thinking that he's a genius. He's telling me how to shoot right. No, he's the one who messed up my shot. And if it wasn't for the shoot away, it would have never got messed up. Because when my dad would just pass me, I just automatically did what was right. But picking the ball off the rack, it made me do what was wrong. But I wrote in the essay about how that happened. And then, my grandpa comes in and my grandpa's like, what Ryan really wants is independence. I'm in high school and then he's like, this is normal. The reason he's fighting with his dad because he wants independence. No. The reason why there was conflict with my dad was because my dad got the shoot away machine, messed up my shot. Otherwise, I would have been a star. There would have been no problems. Everyone would have been happy. And the number two thing was, my grandpa's like, Ryan, because my dad was like, I give up. I can't help you anymore. You suck now. And then I'd be like, Dad, I need your help. And he'd be like, ask me again, I'm going to fuck you up. Or I'd be like, Dad, can we shoot like once a week? No, I'm going to shoot whenever I want to. And then he would be capricious. So my grandpa's like, Ryan, you just have to accept his calls. Yeah, everything is fine. You just have to accept it. So then my mom and dad would come up to me like, Ryan, you just have to accept it. Everything is fine. And they misinterpreted it. And they used that as a way to abuse me and think it's okay to abuse me and be abusive and be callous and be uncompassionate and not understanding. Ryan, like when my mom kicked me out of the house, we just want him to be independent. Kicked me out of the house, and I was like, I need help from my dad. No, you have to accept it. You just have to accept it instead of being compassionate, listening. But they turn into monsters, and it wasn't my fault. It's because of shoot away. But so if it wasn't for shoot away, none of that would happen. But so I'm writing that stuff and I'm talking about what happened. And the other thing was I was saying how my dad was a great dad growing up. Yeah, I remember I talked to my grandpa. My grandpa was like, Ryan, your dad was a great dad. He was a great dad to you. I was like, yeah, he was a fucking good dad until the shoot away machine. Why don't you get it through your head? That's what happened. But my grandpa was like, it wasn't the shoot away. You were just playing against bigger, better players, and you got frustrated, took out your frustration on your dad, and that's why your dad started beating you up. And that's what the problem. So my grandpa wants to blame me. That's not what happened at all. I was not. They were not bigger, better players. I would have been the best If it wasn't for the shoot away machine, my dad telling me to do the wrong thing. But if it wasn't for the shoot away machine, none of it would have happened. But, so, back to the, my dad was a good dad growing up. Yeah, he did all that stuff for me, but it was a fact of the matter. So that's why I'm not mad at him. I just want to move on. I want them to acknowledge what happened and now move on. I discovered the theory of everything. I can get back into basketball. I can do a lot of stuff. Now, everybody should just erase that mentality of hatred toward me that happened during high school because of the shoot away machine. And now let's move on. But they still, my mom is too immature. And even my grandpa says they're immature. And my grandpa says they're stubborn for not talking to me. Or seeing me. But, I also wrote about how, my uncle told me that my dad used to beat him up all the time, and my dad was a bully, and, like I said, my dad was in college, and, first off, he got C's in college, and he got bad grades, but the only reason why he got into medical school is my grandpa Cohen was, he was a doctor, and he got my dad into medical school off of a wait list at USC. And then, so, again, like at the time though, I was a Marxist, so I'm writing this stuff, and in my mind, like I'm a Marxist still. And I'm like, yeah, you see, it's not about merit and working hard. It's about connections. It's about luck. That's the way I wanted to see things, because I was a Marxist and I was anti-white and I wanted race mixing. But, that's because I saw myself as Jewish, but regardless though, and there's some accuracy to it, but, but not always. But in this case, I'm saying how my dad, he got straight C's. He only got in medical school because of my grandpa, because of nepotism, and because my mom's dad. And, but I was saying how, my dad in medical school, like when I went to Sierra Canyon, this kid's mom came up to my dad and she was like, "You made my life hell in medical school." And she was saying how my dad was abusive to her. And he was abusive, and he would make fun of her, and he basically was a bully. But at that time, I was cool. Now people are gonna be like, "Oh, your dad was always a bully to you?" No, like I said, I was always the king. My mom and dad treated me wonderful. If anything, they treated my sister bad. Like I said, my parents went to one of my sister's games in soccer when I was the best player in the country, and my mom was like, Leah thinks too much. She was like, "What's wrong with Leah? She thinks too much." She was like, "Ryan never thinks when he plays," because they loved me and I was the best. And I would have stayed the best if it wasn't for the shoe wave. My dad wouldn't have messed it up. My dad was basically stupid. He's the one who messed it up. He's the one who messed me up. And the sad thing is, he messed me up and then he abandoned me. And I want to move on. I want to be. I don't want to see it that way. I want him to stop abandoning me and to talk to me and to move on and to help me. And look, I discovered the theory of everything. Now everything could be good. You don't have to continue to abandon me. But like I said, even when I had a baby, even when my ex-girlfriend was pregnant, my dad refused to talk to me. I was hoping that would help to mend the bridges. And then my mom and dad would talk to me and see me, but they want to maintain their grudge and their hatred. But so basically I was talking about how my dad was a bully, and my dad, and my dad, like I said, growing up, my dad was never religious. I never went to any religious thing. So it's not, my mom and dad cussed all the time. My dad would always have road rage and try to run people off the road in front of me with my mom in the car. Like I remember this one time, this lady, there was a huge road rage incident. And my dad was trying to run the lady off the road. He was doing this to the lady, like pig nose. And my mom was like, "Oh my God, Paul, stop it!" Ah! And my dad's like trying to run her off the road. And my dad had, anger issues, but never with me. Like I said, because I was the best. My dad loved me. My dad went to every one of my games. Everything was great until the shoot away machine. My dad fucked shit up. I was the best, and I would have stayed the best, but he got the shoot away machine and made me shoot wrong, and then he told me to do the wrong thing with my feet. Shooting is all about just catching the ball, moving into it naturally. I would have maintained doing it naturally, maintained being the best, but my dad screwed it up. So, so I'm trying to, I'm writing to my ex all this stuff to let her know that I'm, it makes it seem like I'm the bad guy, but I wasn't the bad guy. I discovered theory of everything, but like I said, because of the abuse that happened, my mom and dad, they my grandpa comes in, he made things worse. Ryan just has to make accept things, and he just wants to be independent. So then when I discovered the theory of everything, my grandpa's like, Ryan didn't really discover the theory of everything. He just wants to be independent, and the only way we can get him to let go of this quattro model is if he becomes independent. And no, I discovered the theory of everything, and I tried to explain to my grandpa. My grandpa's like, "Well, there's not 4 planets, Ryan. There's 8 planets." And I'm like, "No, there's 4 terrestrial planets." And my grandpa's like, "Oh my God, what about all the things in 3s and 7s?" I'm like, "You don't understand, Grandpa. But my grandma's like, you didn't discover a theory of everything. What? Everything is energy. That's a theory of everything. And I'm like, no, Grandpa. But anyways, and then my mom and dad took my grandpa's teaching. They're like, oh yeah, make him independent. Ryan, we're never going to see you. You just have to accept that. And so I haven't seen my parents in 20 years. And I'm trying to, text my ex about this and let her know that this is what's going on. And it's not my fault. I discovered theory of everything. Things don't have to be this way. But my parents are bad parents. They're bad people. And I don't want them to be. I want them to become compassionate and let go of their evil ways. But they're not doing it. I discovered theory of everything. I don't need to be treated with disrespect. So but basically I tried to, make my, because I don't want people to look at me as the bad guy. People are going to think, oh, Ryan was the bad guy. And I'm like, no, my dad was, like I said, I grew up, my dad and I would listen to rap music all the time. And he, and uncensored Eminem and the Lynch Mob and Wu-Tang and all that stuff. And so it's like, my dad, if people want to be like, oh, well, maybe your mom and dad are treating you bad because you're not a perfect, righteous, religious boy. No, my parents never did anything religious with me. And, my point is, things were great with me and my dad. Things were great. He went to every one of my games. He loved me. He shot baskets with me every single day in the backyard. Everything was wonderful. But then he got the shoot-away machine. It messed up my shot. He didn't know it was a shoot-away machine. He thought there was something wrong with me because coinciding with the shoot-away, he had me shooting overhead. But like I said, if he would have just been passing to me, I have the videos. I moved into overhead shots perfectly. If he would have been passing me, I would have been the best. But is the shoot-away machine, it made me shoot wrong. And then because you have to step incorrectly, like I said, yes, it is true that you can step moving this way and go like this, but you're not going to be, my dad wanted me to spin into it with your right foot like this. No, if you look at the NBA players that do this, when they move to the right, this is an inaccurate shot, but their feet will be more straight like this. But I'm doing that every single time, and that's why I start shooting my left foot in front of my right. My dad didn't know that, but everybody who moves this way and shoots like that is going to do that. That's just the way it is. But that's why good players often move the ball to the left hand, or even if they're going this way, move the ball to the left hand, and then it goes like this and stuff like that. But pick the ball off the rack all the time and doing this all day, it made me shoot wrong. Pick the ball off the rack and going like this. Whereas before, when my dad would just pass to me, I would catch it and step into it naturally. So my dad messed up my shot. But so I was writing to my ex to let her know, people are going to want to blame the victim. But the fact of the matter was, my dad was the problem. He's the one who messed up my shot. And I wanted to let people know. And, people, and then he started to abuse me. But people are going to think, oh, well, you must have deserved abuse. But I wanted people to know, well, first off, my dad was always abusive to everybody, apparently. He was always a bully. My uncle didn't like him. Nobody liked him. And nobody liked my mom either. And I let people know that too. That my grandma hated my mom because my mom, she said she was a name caller, that she treated my uncle bad, called him a bunch of names, called him gay, that she was a mean, bad person. And, but like I said, growing up, my parents were awesome to me. Things were great. But I wanted people to, but I was just, the reason why I'm writing this to my ex to let her know all this is before she had the abortion, was to let her know, listen, I'm not the bad guy here. Can you please show me some compassion? I'm a victim. I was a victim, and if it wasn't for the shoot-away machine, I mean, it's not just a victim of my mom and dad, because they were good parents. Like I said, they were good. They were good people. And that's what my ex was saying. My ex was like, your parents I love your mom. Yeah, people think that my mom's awesome, but they don't realize it's not just my parents that was a problem. It was a situation. My parents had the best intentions. They got the shoot-away machine, and it messed up my shot. But then also my grandpa, it was like a whole confluence of just terrible things. Then my grandpa comes in, my grandpa makes things worse with his meta-psychiatry. Oh, Ryan just wants independence, because my grandpa's all into Ayn Rand. And I always thought that meta-psychiatry was just white supremacy, conservatism. And that was terrible for me because I was a victim. So Ryan just wants independence. Oh, you can't make things happen. But that's maybe even more of a Marxist, because I'm like, dude, you can't make things happen. Why don't you, instead of just making me the bad guy, how about you tell my mom and dad to start treating me better? How about you tell them to talk to me? Well, I can't make things happen. They haven't asked the questions. I always saw my grandpa's teachings as just a way to blame the victim and maintain the conservative thing, and he didn't help me. So I'm going to get to that more, but my point is, like, I wanted my ex to know that I was that, yeah, I might not have been an innocent victim. I wasn't an angel, but at the same time, I was a victim. And, you know, because she would have thought, you know, the reason your mom and dad are not talking to you is because you're a bad guy. And then, so she thinks that there's a justification for her not to talk to me. Yeah, so I'm going to just ghost you because, you know, even your mom and dad think you're mentally ill. I'm not mentally ill. I'm a victim. I'm being mistreated, you know? And she was mistreating me, but she thought it was okay because my parents won't talk to me and see me. So she starts to make assumptions. Oh, so I won't talk to him. So then she had an abortion. Like I said, I was asking her, she needed to be on bed rest. So I'm messaging her, hey, sweetie, please, are you on bed rest? What's going on? Can I please talk to you? I don't want my daughter to die. But then she won't respond to me. And then she's not messaging me back. I'm worried because she needs to be on bed rest and I'm not taking care of her. She said that in order for the baby to survive, I need to be taking care of her. And then she ended up getting the abortion.